And here we go. We're live, Stevie. How do you
Oh,
do?
moshi moshi.
Moshi moshi. Hajime mashite.
Still gozaimasu. Or, well, it's morning here, but I think was it konbanwa over there?
Konbanwa, yes, for the evening.
Mike Summer.
Welcome, Odozo.
Yeah. Omedetou gozaimasu.
Well, you seem to, you have some familiarity with Japanese, I see.
Hang on, I just turned the volume of the computer. I do. I was there for a while, many years ago. It's now seems in a previous life, but I think you were, well, you're obviously there, but I think you were there in a bit of a previous earlier part of your life as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, hello anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello anyway.
Good to meet up. Thanks for the invite, or the mutual invites, whatever.
Well, I'm a fan of your channel.
Well, I've been looking at your channel, Mike, and I don't know if you noticed a while ago. Thank you to my subscribers. I did a little celebratory video for 100 subscribers because it took me a while to get there, so I was quite pleased about getting there. But I gave you a shout out.
I remember. I was flattered.
Well,
doesn't happen very often.
No, but you notice I said everybody loves you, because I thought they do really. But yeah, I'd been looking at your channel some time, and I thought, well, I've got to mention Mr. Ricefields because I have a Japan connection as well in the past, and there were a few things about your channel that I thought I've got quite a lot of similarity with this guy, and also the way I was very interested in the way you're doing videos, and it's sort of like I was aspiring because I started off having no clue with YouTube or whatever, even how to use the camera, so I thought I'd better get I'm very old school technology. So I thought, well, this guy's having quite a good approach, and I kind of sensed the creativity, and I thought, I think we've got some similarities here. And then I think I went back through your videos and I watched an introductory video, and something really stuck with me is that you mentioned that you'd had a gap in your vinyl collecting. So you were collecting when you were young, and then you had a huge gap. And that really got me to thinking. I was trying to sketch out, because it hit home with me, because I thought, well, that's me. I had a huge gap, and now my channel is all about reconnecting with my vinyl collection. And I thought, well, this guy's reconnecting with his. He's like an expat. He's gone to Japan. He lost a lot of his collection. And now he's doing like an assemblage of his favorites, and he's got some of his favorites with him. So I found that quite interesting. I saw a lot of similarities there. How about yourself?
Well, I was really taken by your self-deprecating humor of the channel.
Well, that's another similarity. I noticed there was a bit of in the UK we call it a bit piss taking. So I thought, I don't want to take. I mean, seriously, Michael. I started off, and I was like asking people, how do you get text on the screen? How do you get a picture on the screen? And I thought, oh, to hell with this. And we sometimes looked after a little 5-year-old. He's a bit bigger now. So I stole her magnetic numbers when she was learning the alphabet, and I just thought, I'm just gonna put this across the screen. Sod it. Because I wanted to make the introduction graphics go across the screen. So I thought I could use a pencil and paper, but that might look a bit too. So I thought, quirky, and then it just stuck. So now I'm the king of graphics creation, as you can see.
Well, it has a bit of Pee-wee's Playhouse panache to it.
Right.
Your use of plastic letters, and it also kind of harkens to.
Wasn't he convicted of something?
He was convicted of, I believe, exposing himself in a theater.
Thank you so much.
But he did use stop motion photography, and when you use plastic letters like that, it really kind of suggests stop motion photography. And I think you mentioned to me once along the line that you have a photo background, and so I would think that, stop motion is kind of a rudimentary. It's not, I mean, I guess you could do it with software. Probably you
Yeah.
can. But, somebody like you with so much experience could do it in an analog way.
Well, I mean that's another thing, because I got to say, I think if you have a little bit of a creative background, you can kind of see it in other people, or
Yes.
in the way that they conduct themselves, or their approach.
Yes.
And I think that's what I saw, because I was quite envious of your video editing.
Yes.
How's this guy editing this? Why is his text looking so swish? But I thought, well, his approach is coming across to me as quite creative. So I think if you've got a little bit of a background, you can see it in somebody else. And
Yes.
for me, it was many years ago. I was actually working in retail at the height of this is sort of the 80s. We left school. I did a qualification, and then I got a job in a camera shop.
Yes.
So I was getting familiar with amateur photography and the cameras, and that was at the height, the boom of sort of amateur photography.
And people walking into your shop and saying, I want to attempt to take this type of a photograph, and you're selling them camera gear and chemicals and whatnot. So you have to put yourself in their shoes as to how they want to arrive at that photo they want to make.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Very similar thing in this YouTube world.
Well, later on, I then got a job in a well-known professional camera shop, which was known. It was only one shop by a sort of entrepreneur, self-made millionaire. It was a good story about that. And that kind of inspired me, because I kept getting, it was quite near the art college. So I kept getting these art students in, and I always had like a little photography bent myself. So one day when I'd had enough of it, I just, it's very interesting, of course, dealing with all the professional photographers. And you got students coming in, and then I just kind of thought, I've got to scratch this itch, and then went and did photography at art college. But I believe you mentioned, were you in an art college in San Francisco or something?
Actually, I went to a 4-year art university. That was my college degree, and that was Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, Rhode Island. And
That's very prestigious. Is that kind of like one of the?
It is. I don't want to brag, but it's a prestigious school. And to be honest with you, I was thinking about this morning, and I'll make this real quick. When I was a student at RISD, there were really kind of a few types of students. There was a student that went there that knew exactly what they wanted to do with their life. They knew they were a fantastic illustrator. That's all they want to do. They graduated in illustration. They're making illustration.
And they were already good at it when they came in. Bang. I'm just using your facilities. Off I go. Yeah.
There's a student that went there that has got a lot of energy, but is not really cut out to be an artist. Okay. And they go from major to major, and sometimes they drop out. And then the other type of student, which I think is the bucket I fell into, was naturally talented, but tried different things throughout the course of the school 4-year period, and then decided in the middle and late what I wanted to major in, because you had to pick a major, right? And I picked painting. And I had friends who were illustrators, graphic designers, photographers. And when you are a freshman at that school, you go through a rigorous foundation program, a lot of problem solving. You take drawing, you take 2D, you take 3D. And that's where I really cut my teeth in terms of visual problem solving, because it was a very rigorous program. I think the school is known for that. So, they'd have things like, tonight, this is due tomorrow, just take corrugated cardboard and Elmer's glue and make me an orange. And the students would go,
I think that's what I see in your videos then, because I saw that process. I mean, for myself, I kind of didn't. It was just like a 2-year course. It was not that high level. It was before a degree. It was called a HND, High National Diploma. And yeah, some people, it was a college where you basically you're free to explore anything. So there wasn't rigid classes. It was just more mentoring and explore your creativity. And because I've had this camera shop background and I knew all of the equipment, they let me on to the second year of that. So so I just did what I wanted to do, and I found it was more. I was drawn more to conceptual fine art.
Really?
Yeah, that's the way to think of me. But people, when I say people, they just kind of burst out laughing. But on a serious side, and then they said, "Oh, Stephen, we like you. Would you like to stay for another year?"
Mm-hmm.
Got money for keeping their students. And they invented a new certificate called a CED, a continuing education diploma.
They have those in the United States.
Right. And they put that together with the HND and said, well, you do this year and we'll give you a degree.
It's great.
And I thought, that's wonderful. I haven't got a degree because I left school without any qualifications, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then towards the end of that year, the college went bust.
Oh.
I never got a degree.
Oh, geez.
They gave me a certificate.
Oh, geez.
They said, well, we haven't got any money. We can't ratify it. So
right.
Sorry about that. So I thought, oh, it's okay. So we both got kind of like a creative background, maybe old school, but maybe that's what I saw in your videos that attracted the way you were creatively problem solving.
Yes.
Like a language, I guess, and you can see it in others. So yeah, that's very interesting. So we've got that similarity.
Yes, we do.
And we've got this kind of long break similarity.
We do. We have. May I do this?
Yes.
We have a large gap in vinyl in our backgrounds.
Yeah, and I found that fascinating because there must be a lot of that.
Has to be because you have people our age. I mean, maybe there's 8 to 10 years difference in our ages, but we moved, right? I mean, life changes. The last thing a kid thinks about is lugging his vinyl collection with him across country or to another across the United States or to another country, right? Yeah. And so, back in those days when we were early collecting as kids, records were in my country $2.99. They were a commodity, nothing like it is today.
Yeah, they were about. I can remember back in the day having a little bit of pocket money as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, and LPs kind of in that sphere went from £2.50 up to £4.99, £5 up to 1980, 81. Because I can remember getting things like a record token. They were very popular back then for £5 and thinking this is an LP, and I've still got records in there where it's got £4.99 on it. And I can remember walking in the shop with a record token from Christmas from Gran. And I did a paper round as well when I was young, like 50 pence.
Yeah.
Remember thinking I'll do that paper and then I'm going to shoot out to Woolworths and get a single by some glitter band or something, David Bowie or T-Rex, that kind of thing in the late 70s. So we're buying the records in that period, and then as I go to school, I think the late 70s, early 80s were my kind of height of my buying vinyl.
How did you begin? Let's go to let's start at the very beginning, because I think that's very important. You had older brothers, I think you mentioned to me. So somebody must have influenced you.
Yeah, I had two older brothers. The eldest wasn't that musically inclined, but he would buy records from the charts. Mm-hmm. And then he got into kind of disco, the latter half, and he used to go out dancing to get the girls mainly. So he was very kind of Saturday Night Fever. The middle brother, he was quite interesting. He was more not audiophile, but he had a lot of American stuff. I remember things like Wishbone Ash, Billy Joel. No, what was the other one? I can't remember. But yeah, he had a lot of American stuff, and he was a bit more middle of the road, but he was a bit more vinyl.
Yes.
And he has an interesting history because later on in life, he would work for Virgin Records,
Oh,
the manager of a Virgin Records store.
okay.
And he worked at HMV, and then he was like manager of a big HMV record store. So his early career was all about record stores and vinyl. So I used to get bits of free stuff later on, but the earlier stuff when I was growing up, you know, as a kid, I was exposed to the glam rock sort of side of things, Bowie, T-Rex, Roxy Music, and then there came punk, but I was a bit more into rock and roll, like The Who. I've just done a video on The Who, which was a really love of mine. And then about 78, 79, 1980, we had the Jam, we have the mod revival, which was very popular at school. And then just as we go after the 80s, the early 80s, it's very much in the indie sort of. I kind of passed on Joy Division a bit to start with, but I did get into New Order, and then things changed for me. Echo and the Bunnymen, Susie and the Banshees, and we had all of those bands. We were surrounded by them.
Yes.
It was just such a creative time, New Romantics and all the electronic synthesizers coming in. So that was a very kind of creative time, and I really bought into it. So I think where it starts for me is like early on with a couple of friends getting on the bus with the pocket money and money I'd earned and going into town, and we would tour. It would just be our usual thing. We'd have like a little tour of record shops and walk to each one, and we would go through the bins. What you're going to buy this time? And this was in south of England, in Dorset, in Bournemouth, mainly Bournemouth and Poole, which is like a big town. And back then, it had about 5 or 6 record shops. So we would hit those all. We would buy a burger for 65 pence. Up at the Triangle, and then perhaps go down the beach a bit, and then come home on the bus. And that was our routine for quite those early years.
Yes.
And I had some other friends. I mean, I think I was a bit of a loner at school, so I had sort of certain friends in pockets, so to speak. And then towards the end of high school, I was in a band playing the drums. We weren't very successful, but they were getting into the Jam, and that got me into the Who, and then there was all the indie stuff from then on. And then I had a sort of period as a bit of a loner, but I would buy indie stuff and then go to the record shops on my own. But I had one friend who was just into punk. He liked Damned. He liked the American kind of Dead Kennedys before anybody had even heard of them.
Right.
Crass, and Ex-Mal Deutschland. So it was all exotic stuff like that. And I used to go around his house, and we would just listen to records. And he would play me the punk, and I would put my New Order on his record player and stuff like this. But I've never had a really decent record player. That's another project for this channel, the resurrection of my. So that's kind of my stories, the late 70s, sort of early 80s. That's where it all starts for me. And as we go through the 80s, and I'm living in different flats, it's getting more difficult with the collection. It's left at home, and it starts drifting away.
Yes.
And I was trying to catalogue this long break of like where the records were. They were stored at Mom's in my bedroom cupboard, and then they moved here, there. It's quite a long, boring story, so I won't bore you with it. But it's only the last few years where I've gotten the collection, started adding to it. I started adding to it about 2010, 2012, buying bits and pieces, but not playing anything, just taking the collection. It was only the pandemic that really kick-started. We moved here. I had a garage. They were in storage, moved to storage, then moved them here, and then thought, well, I've got a shelf in that cupboard. I'll renovate this cupboard. That would be nice, a vinyl collection. Then starting to clean the vinyl and thinking, God, this is some fantastic stuff here, So where does it all start for you?
Well, it started for me. in the 60s, and I am the youngest of three. And my oldest brother left for college, and then a few years later, my sister left for college, and both of them left a good portion of their records behind. And I, of course, as a curious young boy alone, went into their rooms, right?
Like me, you were delving into your brother's records and your
I
family.
was getting to be, there was a 10-year gap in our ages. So my brother and I were, he was 10 years older than I was. And so it's kind of my way of getting to know him. So I would go into his bedroom and I would see his records, and he had Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and he had Blues Project, and he had the Mothers of Invention. And it was the Mothers of Invention that I gravitated towards because it was funny, it was irreverent, it was dirty. And I had a record player and I would play his records. They were Freak Out, and they were We're Only in It for the Money. And I would hear things like Susie Cream Cheese and, What Would You Do, Daddy? I forget the little ditties. And I would bring those records to school because I was armed with a piece of maturity under my arm for my classmates because they didn't have older brothers as old as mine. And I would play these records for my friends, and some of them really liked it, and some of them didn't like it at all. And to this day, some of those people remind me of the fact that I introduced them to the Mothers of Invention. So I had a very sophisticated introduction. Of course, I love the Beatles, and I had the Beatles. I wasn't really ready to buy yet.
Sure, with the music, you had a kind of more mature sort of
Yes.
mindset background going into high school with the music and stuff, and love for the blues and stuff, because I've seen your videos on the blues.
But this was actually grade school and junior high school, this timing.
Yeah.
My sister had Big Brother in the Holding Company, Janis Joplin. And when I played that, I thought I was listening to the devil. When I heard Janis for the first time, I must have been like 9, 10 years old. And so they kind of informed me earlier. It wasn't until years later that the three of us were together and I told them about how I learned about them through their records. Because after they started coming home from college, they were into a completely different scene at that point. Whether it was enjoying the trappings of the 60s free love style. I don't want to get into that in terms of what my brother and sister were exposed to as older people, but they got me kind of indoctrinated early. So I would go to record stores with friends, and remember in those days you couldn't really listen to records. You'd only hold them up in the shrink and look at them and wonder what they sound like. So you had to rely on your friends to share records with you, and that's what happened with me, right?
And I think that you're a little bit older than me, but we kind of overlap a bit because you're listening to Mott the Hoople, and you're getting into Mott the Hoople, and you're liking the early Mott the Hoople, which is the real Mott the Hoople.
Yes.
And I'm sort of listening to the glam rock Mott the Hoople on Top of the Pops on television. Won't you roll away the stone? This sort of thing. Just as they're about to kind of end, with Bowie and T-Rex, that kind of period. But you didn't like the glam rock.
I did not. I thought they looked foolish. When I saw Overend Watts wearing, an open top with his hair and the boots, for me, that was just garbage. So, I appreciate that they made a lot of money with all the young dudes, but for me, I really gravitated to what their core was, which was the melding of Dylan and Procol Harum. I mean, I just bought off on that, and that happens with people. It's the early stuff that just you get indoctrinated with.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened to me with like the Who, and listening to that kind of thing. But it was really listening to getting into the Jam and being very excited that made me backtrack into the Who and more of their full catalogue. So I had that going on as well as all the new indie stuff.
Yes.
But I did have a little bit of a background in the 70s in listening to my brother playing a lot of that. So like you, I got a view backwards as well as forwards, or what was happening in the present. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the taste that I developed for myself without the help from my brother and my sister was, and I know they're not your favorite, but it was Genesis and it was Mott the Hoople and a few others. And I think by the time I went to RISD, I had a collection of 500 records. I built that up
Wow.
over the course of growing up. But I don't think I brought them. I didn't bring them all to college with me. I only brought a handful because you don't really need records in college. You're so busy, and your friends have got records, right?
Yeah.
So I think at that stage, things just started getting stagnant, and I kind of slowed down. You know, my taste changed. I wasn't such a focused hobbyist anymore. I was being exposed to other things, and Talking Heads went to RISD, and my friends and I would go and see them play at a place called Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel. And my friends got into other things. They got into glam rock. I, you know, I had friends in college who were listening to Boston in one room, another group that was listening to, Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, others that were listening to Television and Talking Heads. And it was just a hodgepodge. But music kind of drifted away from my psyche beginning with graduating from art school.
Yeah.
It just became less important to me.
Well, I mean that's another topic we could talk about, is that because you remind me of something there, like in my video I've just done about the Who. It still upsets me now. A new kid at school moved in, said, "Oh, I like your My Generation LP. Can I borrow it?" And it was original Brunswick pressing, first pressing in mono, and then he disappeared with it. He stole it. And you saying about Ziggy Stardust, things like that. I had a first pressing of that as well, and I traded it in stupidly. And you think, oh my, that's crazy. Now it's like very, very sort of. But I really get what you're saying, because I can remember that friend who was the punk that I used to go round his house a lot. He would still ring me up after school and suggest going to gigs. So I would either go with other friends, myself, or go with him.
Yeah.
And I remember he said, do you want to come and see the Stranglers? And, I wasn't that into the Stranglers. I didn't like them that much, even though they're a great band. So I said, yeah. And I remember going to the gig, and this was sort of mid later 80s. And halfway through the gig, I was bored. And I thought, well, before everybody rushes to the bar afterwards, I'm going to go and get a pint of beer. So I can remember saying, I'll just get the loo. And I'm walking out the gig and sitting outside the gig in the hallway. And the people at the bar, were looking at me saying, what's wrong with him? He's not enjoying the music. And just sitting by myself having a pint of beer. Because I just thought, I'm bored with this, even though it was probably a fantastic gig. I something similar to you, the later 80s, you don't have the vinyl with you, and CDs came in later. And I think the nail in the coffin was CDs for me, because I just couldn't get into them. And so
Let me pause for a second. Let me just say hello. Let's say hello to somebody, which is kind of what happens with these live streams. So Vinyl Scavenger, I think you're in the UK. It's evening for me, and it is morning for Stevie, and we're taking advantage of this window here, and we're seeing what we can do with it.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
So that's very interesting, because it just I could feel myself switching off, and I think it was only later on. I saw New Order 4 times, I think. And
so this was early 80s.
Early 80s. Yeah, but I think the last time was like 84. But after that, I could feel myself switching off. You're concerned with other things, the partner trying to buy a flat or rent a flat. You can't carry it around with you. Your record player's broken, so you buy another one at a second-hand place, but it's not very good. It sounds very tinny.
I'm not all in anymore, right? When you're growing up, you have the protection you have the room and board provided by the family. You can buy records.
Yeah.
But once you're mobile, records were a boat anchor.
And then it was jobs and moving around.
Sure.
And then it was a big step out, because when I was working in the camera shop, in walked a nice Japanese girl, and kept asking for me, and could I do her developing and printing on her photos? And we started looking at her photos. She was very sweet. So she became a pen pal. And then I'd split up with my girlfriend. So as a small town boy, I went on to visit my pen pal in Tokyo, and it completely blew my mind, And back then there were hardly any foreigners. I think this was 1988.
Yeah.
Hardly any foreigners in Japan.
Should we do the segue and let me change. Here we go. Here we go.
Let's ramp up the similarities.
Here we go. Okay, let me just adjust my.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we have that in common. Our mutual Japan collection. So we need to go back to the vinyl thing, only because let me just remind you where it dropped off. We whittled down, but we need to talk about the epiphany of when we decided to build it back up. But we can save that for another call or cover that later.
Or we can save it for just after this.
Yes.
Because so where was I? Pen Pal 88.
Yes.
Mind blown, because I hadn't even been abroad that much,
She was the customer. In other words, you were enamored with her so much that you dropped what you were doing and you went to Japan to follow. Jesus Christ, I did the same thing.
Wow.
I did the same thing with Mrs. Rice.
Oh, so you're still with Mrs. Rice?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, this pen pal, it didn't work out. I mean, I remember, because I was quite taken with her, quite smitten, and I was still with my current girlfriend, and I had like an escape day off where she wanted to go to the Isle of Wight, which is quite a big. So I'd cycled a huge amount of time to meet her at the train station. We got a train, and you could go from Bournemouth to the Isle of Wight on the train. So we went to the Isle of Wight the whole day, then back, and then on my bike, and then miles home. And it's like, well, where have you been? And it's like, well, I've been to the Isle of Wight with a Japanese girl. I couldn't say that at the time. Yeah, so she was a pen friend. So I had this amazing, mind-blowing, and that opened a fascination with Japan. Japan became kind of quite popular and trendy in the news. So I was like fascinated with the culture. And so when I was working in the camera shops, and when I was in the professional camera shop, I did a TEFL teaching qualification, which me to then go to Tokyo and do TEFL teaching English as a foreign language. So I took some time off. I did a season in Bournemouth, and I had lots of different nationalities, and that was quite eye-opening as well. I like different nationalities. I had a big class of Japanese girls as well at one stage, which was quite fun. So then I got a TEFL teaching job. I'd met another girl while I was teaching English in Bournemouth, another Japanese girl. So I kind of chased her, and we went to Japan. So I was with her for about a year. She was my introduction. So I stayed with her family, and then we stayed on our own. And then I was on my own for about another year. So I was about 89, 90 into 91, about 2 years. So I did TEFL teaching in Tokyo. But I'll never forget that first trip, in that foreigners were very few and far between in Tokyo.
Yeah, and very welcomed by the population. I mean,
I can remember, I don't know if you've ever been to Kamakura, which was like, I went to Kamakura once, and I had school children running up to me, because they wanted to look at me, because they'd never seen blue eyes before, because they were on a trip from the countryside. They'd never seen a foreigner. So all these kids were like running after me, chasing me.
Yes.
And they said, well, can we have a photo? So I've got like a photo of me with like 200 kids, and there's me in the middle as like some sort of rock star. So you were very much different. I can remember walking down the street when I visited my pen pal, and a new development in a flat, staying with her parents, and I was walking down the street, and it was so eerie because people would come out of the houses, and they were like, "That's a foreigner walking down the street."
And this is Tokyo.
Yeah, who is he?
Which is an international. You were in It's still an international city, and
Yeah,
you were still being ogled as a foreigner, which is
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So what's that walking down? It's a foreigner.
Mm,
And then when I went back, obviously they're getting a bit more used to foreigners and seeing an English teacher, but you would still at that stage be on a crowded station and you would see another foreigner like a few platforms over and you kind of wave to the other foreigner and like thumbs up, how you doing? And then the trains would come and you wouldn't see them again, you know. So
right.
it's quite an exciting time to be.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think were we there at the same
We
time?
were. I arrived, I think, in May of '88, and I stayed. I stayed until '93. I was here for 5 years, but still, I mean, when I arrived, you arrived, and I also taught English when I first arrived. So I'm sure I mean, I know we've had very, very similar experiences here, um, because Japanese have different reasons for wanting to learn English.
Yeah,
There's a different modus operandi for everybody.
yeah,
Um, it's, if they're a school kid, the parents want them to learn, and if they're um, an ambitious, talented young man, he's got an eye on possibly going to the United States or getting transferred with his company.
yeah.
And if it's a female, it might be wanting to travel, but also possibly meeting and marrying a foreigner. So there was a real hunger for English, and what most people who live outside of Japan don't understand is that, and I'm telling you what you already know, is that Japanese is an incredibly formidable language. You have three different writing symbology, and English is taught in a written format because the teachers here, the Japanese, it's kind of like chicken and the egg. They can only learn English from foreigners because the Japanese nationals really never learn to speak English for themselves because they
Yeah,
learn from a book.
yeah. And the students I had, it was sort of trying to improve. They're either planning on going on holiday, improving their work prospects by on their CV, I can speak English, which, like you say,
Yes,
getting more important, and or their company had sponsored them because they wanted to have somebody that was useful on the phone. So I used
yes.
to groups, singles, pairs, groups. So it's quite different from when I was teaching English for a couple of seasons in the UK.
I would think that they were more up to speed in the
Yeah,
UK or more functioning in
and
terms of.
I remember students, at the language schools were like booming in Tokyo. There was all manner of different
Oh yeah.
languages.
Oh
Some of them very good, some of them better than others. Um, but yeah, they actually charge quite a lot of money, so it's quite an expensive thing for people
yes,
to, if they were going to learn English, had to commit themselves. That was their main
yes,
hobby, and it was quite expensive because the schools would be raking it in, and they were
yes,
paying teachers quite a good salary as well,
yes.
comparatively.
And is respected. Let's not let's not let's not kid ourselves. I mean, yeah, there were foreigners who weren't serious about teaching English, but to the
Yeah,
Japanese people, if you had a teaching degree or a degree from a school and you were teaching English, you were respected. I mean, you were ego no sensei.
you were,
Um,
yeah,
you weren't looked upon as a dishwasher or a laborer. You were looked upon with respect, and with that respect came
yeah.
being taken out for dinner and drinks. And so
Well,
I, as a foreigner, you
we
as a foreigner, probably go on.
Yeah, we had a strict rule at our school. You weren't allowed. I did a few different schools, but the last one was about a year at something School of English, and we had a very strict rule. You're not allowed to fraternize with the students.
Yeah,
But I think
it
possibly
happens.
well, actually, most evenings in the week, I would be meeting up with the class in a izakaya. We'd have food and drinks together.
Yes,
Don't say anything. Where are we meeting? Like
yes,
like almost every night sometimes. Yeah, but there were guys. They were there for you know, the girls, they were backpackers, they were there for the money and the
Sure,
girls.
sure.
But I was much more, because I had a previous appreciation and fascination, so I was much more there for the culture,
Mm.
and you know, there's a bit of drinking, but you know, the culture and the sights as well. A lot of my photography revolved around taking pictures of Japan, and then later when I was at art college, I kind of unpacked a lot of the negatives that I had from that period, and I started printing them, and people were like very positive, you know, and it became a little bit of a portfolio, this Japanese portfolio of pictures.
One type of person, when I first arrived here, I mentioned to you briefly that my friend Joseph was here before me, who I went to school with at RISD. But his wife was a photographer from Panama, and in the 80s, there was another individual who made big bucks in Japan, and that was the stock photographers. Because remember,
Yeah,
there was no image databases or digital photography. It was all film, and a lot of these people took beautiful photographs of Japan and sold them to stock photo agencies. They made very good livings, and they would travel all around the world. But
yeah,
a lot of them made their homes in Japan, and I knew quite a few of stock photographers, and their photography would go into really thick uh, photo books that stock photo agencies would have. And stock photo agencies used to be very common for the advertising industry, the magazine industry. Oh, I need a picture of a Japanese man smoking a cigar. Oh, okay, in the sunlight or evening, and they would look it up. And if the photo was used, I believe that stock photographer either would get a royalty or the agency bought it outright. But photography was pretty big back then.
and another angle for the foreigners. I mean, when I was between jobs, because I had a few, I'll tell you a couple of stories. One story, a foreign face or a foreign model, they wanted a foreigner in the picture to show it
Yes.
was international. So a couple of times, you know, you reply to an advert, okay, wear a suit and a tie, and your job would be to stand there with a clipboard with a Japanese person pointing at the clipboard, go, oh, you know, like, oh no, oh yeah, interesting, you know, and that was the photo, you
And
know.
they paid you 50, 75, 200,000 yen for that job.
Well, I remember getting well, not that much, 50,000 yen
Fine.
for one job, and all I was doing was like in a group, and they said, I want you to give me expression on face. You're very interested in what he's saying. So I was like, oh, that's fascinating. You know, that was 50,000. Yeah.
I did it too. I did it too.
I
I was a photographic model too. Who'd figure?
told off
With our mugs.
because I showed up for this shoot. I didn't do very many of them. I had a suit, but I didn't have any shoes. So I just had like a pair of suede shoes, and that was a big problem because I was supposed to have, you know, formal shoes. So they had to redo the photo slightly up to cut my shoes out. You know, but another story I can tell you, I made me laugh. I was let go from one school in Ginza because I didn't have a degree at that stage.
What town were you living in Tokyo when you were here? Where were
Um,
you? What was
uh,
your station? You remember?
oh my God.
Okay, sorry.
I was in two. I was in one. The second year, I was in very central. I think that was somewhere near Meguro. Uh,
Okay.
but the first year when I was living with my girlfriend, it was a house her family had bought because they were going to move there, and it was a little town called Ohanajiya, but that was like a couple of trains away. That was one
Okay.
train away, about half an hour away from the Yamanote circular line.
Okay. So you weren't that
And
you were still pretty much in central Tokyo. Yeah.
well, there's another story there because
Go
remember
on.
the Iraq War. I had to change at the one station. I forget what it was. I had to go up off the platform on a bridge, and it was a very busy bridge, and it was the
Yes.
same place where lots of kind of Iranian laborers would be, and they would have to stand on the bridge waiting for their kind of gang master to come and get them for whatever building work.
Sounds
So
like Wayno. Sounds like Wayno.
yeah, it might have been Wayne actually.
Yeah.
And so I had to run the gauntlet as the Iraq War broke out. So they were thinking I was American, and had all these Iraqis there, sort of lining up, staring at you. So you had to like walk through them and
Yeah.
just say, "Oh yeah, I'm from France," and walk. Yeah, that was quite daunting every day, but no trouble occurred. But one job I had to work with a company. Which was I was a bit desperate for work, and they had all these strange assignments. And one assignment was getting on a train going an hour north of Tokyo, get off at the station. I'd be greeted by a bus to pick me up, and it took me to this Fujitsu computer factory, which was set right slap bang in a load of rice fields. So when I saw your channel, that just reminded me about that bang, just Fujitsu factory in the middle of nowhere, just in the middle of rice fields, and this whole bus being sent for the English teacher to go and give a lesson to some workers. So that made me laugh when I saw you. That reminded me instantly of that.
Yeah, I named my channel after where I live because I'm totally surrounded by rice fields.
Well,
they're everywhere.
I've seen. I think a couple of people are puzzled by your channel name.
Yeah, they are.
No, I was thinking, well, he's living in rice fields. It's a great name.
Yeah.
I mean, like mine. I mean, it's me. My vinyl's in a cupboard. It's not rocket science.
No, it's all right. It's also the most important food of the country that I live in. I mean, it's the staple of their diet.
I can remember when I was in Japan, there was a huge bit in the news of Japan Times because they had banned the import of cheap American rice.
Very touchy subject.
Because in Japan, I mean, literally, a farmer's got like 50-meter square rice field, and that's his living.
Yes.
So, and it's very high quality rice.
Absolutely.
They want all the higher grade rice. And it's very sought after. Whereas American rice, it's done like by some machinery in a mile by a mile long farm somewhere. So so they didn't want American rice at all. I remember that.
Yeah, it's family owned farms here, and so it's the difference is that in the West these farms are huge agricultural plots of land. Here it's individual family plots that all grow and sell their rice, and they all they all make it the same way. They'll grow it the same way.
But I think also there's the burnout factor in Japan and
for foreigners.
Yeah. So after about sort of 18 months, 2 years, I started to burn out. Because it's very exciting, but I found life was very up and down, like a roller coaster. One day it'd be fantastic, having a great time. The other side of it is very depressing, and
Carl, I just want to say, Carl, he's got a great channel, and he's been really great to me. And he's saying hi to you. He's saying hi to you.
Hello, Carl.
Oh no, it's actually actually Carl. That's Stevie, and I'm Michael.
Oh. I don't know who Martin is, but
anyhow, let's talk about the burnout real quick. Because it is true. When you're a foreigner and you come to Japan, the first year is just it's Disneyland, right?
Yeah.
Second year, it's a bit of pounding nails. Third year, you got to make a decision.
Yes.
I think it happens to everybody. Everybody. What am I doing here? Am I here for love?
You're away from. You're homesick. You're missing your friends. You're missing. I mean, I missed like Cranston pickle and mustard and real tomato sauce. That kind bizarre things I missed.
Yeah. I mean, people don't realize. Did you ever go to Hiro? They would have. There are certain markets here, areas where the bankers live, and that's in the area near Ibisu, and I forget the market there, but I mean, they would have American imports and British imports, and there's supermarkets markets like Jupiter. You go to Jupiter to get like little Cornish pickles. it's expensive because to bring
Yeah.
it in here, and that's how we get um, uh, a taste of our home countries.
And even if you want a cup of tea, I remember having to buy that, bags of nasty American Lipton's tea, just the basic things. And after a while, it grates and it gets on your nerves because you're living in one crappy room, which is quite expensive. You've got a little grill. You haven't got proper cooking facilities.
Yeah.
You're missing home, and you just think, I'd kill now for a pint of beer and some fish and chips.
I would just like to welcome somebody here. I love this guy. This is Earth David LiveStream, who's got the wildest YouTube channel. You may not know him,
Hello.
and he's making a lot of jokes here, which I really don't want to touch. But I just want to tell you, David, I just think you're the greatest. You're the funniest guy, and thank you for coming.
Hello. Yeah, hello there. Everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome. So we talked a little bit about burnout and other foreigners and when it's time to leave. Maybe we kind of exhausted the Japan thing for a while. Why don't we talk about like coming back to to vinyl? Yeah. Okay. May I go first?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So for 30 years, okay, when I was in San Francisco, probably 25 years. 25 years.
It's decades.
I had a flat. My wife and I lived in a flat in San Francisco, and it was an old Edwardian, and there was some shelves, and on those shelves were probably 75 to 100 records. In that grouping was, my Little Feat, my early Mata Hoople, yada yada yada. Okay. I bought CDs, I streamed, music was not important. Okay. I did buy a turntable and it was that period where you hooked it up to a computer, you tried to like download records. That was a dismal failure for me.
Yeah.
I mean, the scratchiness. So my wife and I are getting ready to pack up and come to Japan. And I get a phone call from a friend of mine. Okay. And he says, Michael, you might want to come over to my house this weekend because a friend of mine, his father passed away, and I think he worked for a radio station.
Wow,
and he had a storage room. And I went to his house, and there were probably 50 to 100 boxes of records opened up. And here I was getting ready to come to Japan. I didn't have a record player. I hadn't even thought about buying records or owning records. But I saw
something went off in your mind.
Because I saw seminal and important records in the piles. And I saw records that I knew were important.
Yeah.
I grabbed them. I saw records that I was like, oh, Garland Jeffries. I kind of know that name. Oh, the first Crosby, Stills and Nash record. Let me get that.
And you got excited and it was, pinging off and you thought, I know what it is. That's important. And you can't let it go.
Can't let it go. So I grabbed 200
dirty,
filthy records, and we included them in our boxes for Japan, and off they went. And they greeted me when I arrived in Japan. And that's how it all started up again. Because here I was in Japan, land of vinyl goodness, and I had these records, and I was retired. I was like, I'd like to get into this, and I'm looking at YouTube, and I'm discovering people like Static Traveler and some of these other folks. And what do? I teach myself. I started to wash the records. I learned how to do that. Wash the records, bought a turntable. I used headphones. I got an Onkyo amp and just started to get into it. And they were my foundation. Those 200 records were my foundation. Some of those 200 records are part of that 10 set that I did the smelly video on. Because they weren't that good, but still, they're what I built on. So I will shut up now and let you speak.
No, that's right. That's fascinating because it's not the same for me, but the underlying mechanism is the same because, like yourself, it's extraordinary to think it's decades, and you're thinking I've lost touch, I've switched off from music, but that core collection is still there. I haven't lost it. and there were like many, like that friend who was into the punk. I met up with him a few years ago, and I was saying, whatever happened to your record collection? You had some fantastic stuff, really collectible punk stuff he had. And he said, oh, I had to let it go. And I thought, oh, and it was on my mind for a few years. And then, like yourself, I was streaming, and I kept finding when I was streaming YouTube, I was streaming like some record, and I'd just be recommended another, as you do. And then the pandemic happened, and I was watching a lot more about vinyl. So, you know, you'd be streaming some music, then it would be like a vinyl sort of YouTube video about the same thing. And I thought, oh yeah, I've still got the vinyl. And it kept hitting my head like, this is now, that's at my mother's, because it kept moving around at my mother's. And then it was in the garage that we'd rented because the last place was too small. And I was like, really should get it out. And all through the pandemic, I was thinking, it was like bugging me. I really should get it out. And then having a big clear out one day, and you know what? I'm going to move those records from the garage. They're in a couple of bins in the garage, and I'm going to renovate that cupboard and put them in. And as I did that, I thought, well, I really need to clean some of them are in a real state. I mean, there was like a New Order Blue Monday 12-inch. I had two of them, and it had like rot spores. It was filthy dirty. So I sat down, I had a table here, and I sat down for a couple of days just gently cleaning. I bought some solution, bought some stuff, bought some sleeve, gently cleaning, and then I got the bug. And I had a kind of mini revival about 2010, 2012, because I was doing a lot of eBay. And if I'd done well on something, I'd buy myself a record. So I expanded it, but never played it. So I had this core collection, a few more things I'd bought but stored, not listened to. And then really it was towards the end of that pandemic, it came back. And then I started going to charity shops and like, oh, there's some good stuff here. Started buying that, bit of that. And then I thought the project set in, well, I can resurrect my collection. I can add to it. I can buy the things now that I should have bought because I had a lack of money when I was a teenager. Those things that I wanted, all those bands that I enjoyed and wanted, and then you know the bug is set deep. So that's the project now, is using YouTube to resurrect the collection, and then perhaps start even listening to it. You know what I mean? So so yeah, it's fascinating. But it was like yourself; it was decades. That's extraordinary. You know,
it's extraordinary because there are people who have lived in their family house the whole period, right? They're 60 years old, and their collections are intact. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 records. It's absolutely fascinating, But to move that is just it's a Herculean task.
Yeah.
So it's always circumstances, these collections.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it was like moving around and not having, like you say, not having that security whereby because I remember, I had a flat with a partner, but I didn't set up the records. I didn't get a record player because the lounge, it was too busy, people coming around. I didn't want my precious vinyl there on display for everybody.
Right.
So I never had that kind of private room or the security of the place to have, the vinyl there, even though maybe it's not that worth it, a lot of it, but it's worth it to me. It's sentimental. I don't want people picking it up, messing with it. But now perhaps we're older and, you're retired. I'm not doing much. We can think about that a bit more. There's more safety and security, and go back to your original hobbies. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, but it's also a bit sorrowful for those people that have lost their collections. But we've all lost the things. But the enthusiasm now is to get the collection as you want it, get it together, and enjoy it.
Yeah. But I will say this, and I'm very opinionated in this regard. For me, it's very important for me to have a small collection. I prefer to know it intimately than be daunted by it.
Well, we're all individuals. This is your preference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, a lot of it has been dictated by money, frankly.
Absolutely,
My,
absolutely.
I'm not going to be doing like I've got the latest MoFi unboxing. I'm the first to do the unboxing video. That's not my that's not my thing. My
Right,
limit is sort of £10 at the charity shop,
right,
where a bit of a sweet spot, and I think yes, I'll get that. But each to their own. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge amount of room, and I don't think I'm going to be like have the two Calax
right.
full of things, because you can only listen to so much
That's right.
at a time. I mean, I quite like still streaming off YouTube, but it's just
Mm,
when set up, I really want to enjoy it.
yeah,
And I think when you get to that stage, you're really playing it and enjoying it. Then that dictates what records you have on hand and how many extra. I suppose I've done a couple of videos. Do I want the full set of these LPs? I mean, on the flip side of that, I think there's nothing wrong with kind of doing something that perhaps might be quite negative and say, you know what, I'm not going to listen to any records. If I put my money in a savings account, I'm losing money because it doesn't pay as much interest as inflation. If I buy this is a better savings account. So I'm just going to use my knowledge to have like an investment of these records over here.
right,
Uh, but I'm not the one that's going to have like I've got all the first press Beatles just for the
right.
sake. I'm going to have things I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So I'll have all the New Order 12 inches. I'll have all the Susie and the Banshees LPs. You know what I mean?
Yep. Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
So things I'm interested in, I'll expand, and I might get a full house or something of that because I mean, you like Susie and the Banshees as well, I think.
I do. I do. I do think I saw them at the I-Beam in San Francisco. I think she's great.
I saw her once at Poole Art Centre, and again, I wasn't that much into her then. It was more my friend Simon that was into Susie and the Banshees. Let's go and see it. And I remember saying, because I wasn't into the songs, I wasn't that familiar. But I think back in the early 80s, people forget that like concert music, the sound balance in some places wasn't that great some of the time. There's on YouTube, I think there's like a couple of early New Order gigs, like Bournemouth Town Hall. It doesn't exist anymore. And, the sound quality was rubbish in there, and if you listen to like a bootleg tape, it's like torture.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of
Right.
great because it's kind of interesting. And you think, I was in that crowd. I was actually in that crowd, but by God, it sounds crap on this recording, So yeah, so I think that was the case. But as we got older, I mean, I love Susie and the Banshees. I'm dreaming about her at night, in an unhealthy way.
There is a video of them performing "Last Beat of My Heart" at a live show,
remember one
and
of
my
your
God, that is an
It's
incredible the way she controls the audience.
wonderful.
Yeah,
And she
absolutely.
goes to the audience. Shh.
Oh,
Oh,
unbelievable, unbelievable. That is classic performing.
it is a male fantasy as well.
Yeah.
Do I dominate her? Does she dominate me? I don't care. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
I'm all yours. Well, anyway, I think I think we've got some great subjects there, because exploring our similarities, and I think it's very interesting that you got two kind of hobbyist YouTube makers, people into vinyl, same interest, but also the same similarities. Some even a different background. We have kind of similar background in a way.
We do.
Maybe there's another video, on the creative connection with YouTube, or the challenges, because I find that quite fascinating. You're trying to make a creative YouTube video. You're trying.
Yes.
I suppose it's called content creation.
That's right.
But you're trying to do it in a kind of individualistic way, in quite a niche area at the same time. It's quite a difficult challenge to make something that's really going to engage. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have an art background, but I also professionally, last 20 years of my life in San Francisco, I worked at home with a partner. He was a talented writer, and I did media relations. Basically, the sales guy, and he would do something called, what we would do is we would go to companies, startups, we would launch them. Okay, so I did hundreds of company launches and product launches for different startups in the Bay Area, all tech, all like networking, wireless, security, that kind of thing. But each one was a similar thing. You had either a CEO who could talk really well, who couldn't talk really well. It was all about public speaking, and we're all about getting this tech company packaged so that an editor could understand what their story was, right? And editors are notoriously impatient people. I mean, when they get they're in a foxhole. Bullets are flying over their heads. They want to know, who are you and why should I care? And so I spent 20 years of my life helping others articulate who they are and why anybody should care about them. That's kind of what I bring to YouTube video.
And I can see that in your videos. I think that's why the attractive. So in a way, I'm trying to catch up a bit with your editing, and your mine's a bit more out of control, as you can see, because I'm not necessarily always taking it that seriously. I don't think, I try and be personable and have a bit of character to the channel, as you do. But yeah, I mean, we could talk about that again if you like.
I would
bring that all together, and the challenges, because there's a lot of challenges with YouTube, because I noticed if you're trying to get a bit of traction with your channel, or trying to get your message out there, you've got to like play a bit of the game, really, and that's full of kind of potholes that can trip you up if you want to keep your integrity and creativity intact. So we could discuss that, I think.
I'd like that very much.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that my one big milestone that was a victory for me was that Rob Walker video with using hair, because I had to get everything done within the parameters of the beginning and end of that song. That was a bitch of a video to make, but I sure learned so much from making it.
You know what? I saw that video and I thought, that's a great idea to do this, because I was trying to think, how would I do that video, and I was thinking it's a very difficult, long. It just gets too long. I thought, this guy's done it in the
3 minutes and 53 seconds.
So yeah, so I nicked your introduction as well for my video.
But that was risky. That was art school. There were typical types of projects your first year, right?
Yeah.
And lots of schools do that. They force students to focus within parameters. And once you start to learn those types of exercises, you can bring them into commercial world.
Yeah. And you can get stuck in the classic, like holding up an LP. How exciting is this? Having said that, I'm going to do
another pasty-faced white guy.
I'm just going to break the rules and do that, look, because I was thinking about you yesterday, and I bought.
Okay. Oh, bravo!
£2. £2. I don't know what the bloody hell it is, but it just seemed. I think it's some. I don't know if you can read that. Get your missus to tell me what is that.
Oh, you'd have to take a picture of that and send it to me.
Yeah,
she's downstairs doing yoga, I think.
Say your friend's got an LP, hasn't got a clue what it is.
You know that you could take Google Translate and take a picture of it.
Oh right, yeah.
That is my. Go on.
I think it's Siemens or something.
It's Siemens.
But it's Japanese on Polydor. So Congress of Radiology. My God.
What is it about? Let me see the record again. What is it about? No, the cover. So it's Siemens, yeah.
Yeah. So Souvenir
of
Japan. It's Siemens. I can't see.
What's it say? To the participants, it looks like it's some sort of. Oh, you know what it is? This is a giveaway.
Yeah.
These doctors, these radiologists, took part in some sort of convention, and Siemens handed them this record has it going as a thank you present, and probably the Japanese got it too. I'm guessing.
What who gives a vinyl record? Here we are. Anyway,
here you go. This is in reaction to Siemens.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. These guys. So we're at an hour and 10 minutes.
Well, that's shot by. Yeah.
You know.
Just
what are
saying.
You thinking? What are you thinking? You thinking?
Yeah. Let's. I definitely think let's do another one about the creative challenge of using our art background. Oh, thank you very much, Carl. That was my first way of getting text into the video. If you look at go and look at an early video of mine, you see how crap it is. Yeah, thank you very much.
YouTube
yeah,
I was in the art background. Yep.
I was thinking, Michael, that yeah, it's a good subject because you see a lot of streams. You're talking about records, you're talking about music, but people are not talking about how you make the videos, or the challenges of making videos. How you can have a channel. Is your channel going to grow? Why do you want it to grow? How do you it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing, but bringing the creativity, making good content.
Yeah.
I think the key is some of your videos. Not being negative, but you've got some great views on some of your videos, but some of the others, the views are too low. But I'm thinking, well, that's a quality video, so people are going to come back to that, and that view will go up over time. So you come back in a few years' time, it will be, very useful creative video for somebody watching, like one of your blues videos, for example. I found those quite nicely, presented or what have you. So it's like trying to make something creative that people will come back to.
Yes.
But also the sort of the pitfalls of the YouTube algorithm.
Well, whatever that is, however how that works. Me neither. I mean, what YouTube tells me what my audience is. My audience is people in my age group.
Thank you, Carl.
My audience is not 20-somethings. My audience is 55 to 75 men. That's who YouTube tells me I'm resonating with. So
yeah. And like Carl just said, thank you very much for subbing, Carl. I'll sub you back. Anybody wants to sub me, I'll sub you back. But
just don't dumb them.
Yeah, a lot of channels that you don't know people are there. I'm still discovering people. I think, well, this is a great channel. I'll subscribe to this, but I've never seen it before. So it's very difficult to get the YouTube algorithm to show you stuff and to show you to other people who you would like to be your core subscribers, or people that perhaps might be people who would make a nice comment on your video, appreciate it. And they're, switching that around, channels being shown to you that you'd like to sub to and you'd appreciate, so it's quite difficult. It's almost a game to play. I don't want to use that terminology, but it is a bit of a game, chicken and egg, like you say there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only pitfall that I want to avoid is, a lot of people, there are a lot of videos on YouTube, which is like how to make a good video, and it's usually some 20-something that is, using words like awesome and cool. That is, go on.
Like Michael, there's the flip side of that. I mean, I've seen loads of things like it's a young, trendy person. They are really, adept at using the app. They're really highly skilled with their presentation, and they'll make a video like 60 seconds on how the Beatles made Let It Be, and it's like George Harrison did that. And this is how the Let It Be LP happened. You think that is so well done, but it's a pile of crap. You know what I mean? It is just, you've done a fantastic job, but that's absolutely something I don't want to see. And it's like, it's an insult to the Beatles, or, and there's a lot of that going on the flip side. People that are very good at it, but they've got zero creativity, zero, integrity, I think is the word,
Yeah.
I dare say they put a lot of heart and soul into it. You know what I mean? And it was a genuine attempt. God bless them. But it's just completely wide of the mark for my personal taste, and you think, you know what I mean? So it's it's a balance. Getting it right is very difficult, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes we might upload too soon. You know, I tend to get things to percolate for me. I sleep on a video.
Yeah.
I will also. I mean, there's. We can get into this in the next video,
Yeah,
next live stream. Yeah,
save it for the next time, I think.
yeah. Save it for the next time.
We've covered a lot
Alrighty,
of ground, so
we did. It was a pleasure.
things are waking up here.
Yeah,
I've got some decorating next door to do, so I've got to earn some pennies. So
you go. You go.
Okay, so well, it's been very nice talking to you, Mike.
You
Mosh.
too. And thank you, everybody. Cool Transport, David Friedman, Carl Tweed,
First, cool, Marius
Stark. Oh, he's great. Just
all right.
you need to look at his chat. Do you know his channel?
I think I know where you're coming from.
All right. So, good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much for watching. And it was great that we could get a time slot, because your other live stream that you do, that's 2 o'clock in the morning for me. So I'm not, I'd be like half asleep, but it's I've watched a couple of those now. So that's why I was learning about you and the other guys on it as well. So it was really nice to make your acquaintance, Michael. And it was great chatting. So thank you very much.
Very good. Bye-bye now.
Okay. Sayonara.
Sayonara.